Live from the pitch pad in New York City. Get ready to unleash your inner entrepreneur with Pitch Live with Amy Summers. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just dipping your toes into the Shark Tank, this is the place to be to discover how to turn your pitch into reality. Fasten your seatbelts, pitch stars, because the spotlight is on you and we are about to make success happen. On this episode of Pitch Live,
most times you pitch something, the answer is probably going to be no. It is for me. I reframe my objectives when I'm giving a pitch to not necessarily getting a yes in one pitch. I gear it towards how I can help them. And if I can make a point that I could add value to what they're doing, they might not say yes right away. They might say yes a year later. They might say yes 2 years later. They might say no, but they might tell somebody, hey, that guy is a really good fit for you. So I reframe my goal for a pitch to not have everything riding on it has to be a yes in one meeting.
Get ready for Pitch Live in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Pitch Live. I'm your host, Amy Summers, founder and president of Pitch Publicity and Inisivox. I'm also a hardworking entrepreneur who is passionate about helping you reach success in any area of your life. And I know that is possible after decades of experience in perfecting the pitch and enhancing communication skills. Which is why I'm here today and joined by Greg Horn, who is a longtime friend and one of the most influential leaders in the natural products industry. Welcome, Greg.
Hi, Amy. Glad to be here.
Now, before I get into your very long bio, I thought it would be fun to just do a quick fire round of questions with you so our audience can get a feel for who you are without the full introduction. So I'm going to ask a few questions. Don't think about it. Just give me your first reaction. I'm only going to give you 2 options. Are you ready?
Ask away.
All right. Vitamin Shop or GNC?
GNC.
Florida or California?
Florida.
Health or wellness?
Wellness.
City or beach?
Beach by the city.
Meat or vegetables?
Vegetables.
All right. So Greg and I have known each other for nearly 2 decades, ever since we first met during a sailboat regatta at the NBJ Summit. An unforgettable start to what's become a very meaningful professional relationship. Recently, I reconnected with Greg in preparation of his NBJ Lifetime Achievement Award, which brought our initial NBJ networking moment full circle for me and really, I think, underscores the true power of connections. I basically cornered him on the sailboat. He couldn't go anywhere. Do you remember that, Greg?
I do.
Greg is a visionary innovator with an incredible 4 decades of experience in enhancing health and nutrition and sustainability. From his time as CEO of GNC, where he drove revenue to $1.5 billion, to his role building powerhouse brands like GNC's Megaman and Celsius. Greg continues to set new standards for health innovation. Today, as managing director and partner at William Hood & Company, he helps shape the future of healthy living investments while also guiding companies through his specialty nutrition consulting firm. Additionally, he is the best-selling author of Living Green and Living Well, and he's been a driving force in the natural products industry. So I'm so excited to share how Greg makes success happen, or as we call it, MSH, or make shit happen. Greg definitely knows how to do that. Greg, welcome. I'm really excited to get into it.
Fantastic.
Well, you began your career as one of the youngest CEOs in the natural products industry to lead GNC at a time when experience was valued more than youth. Might be kind of the opposite today. People are always looking for the younger, but back in those times, I'm sure it was very difficult for you to get into that role. So for our emerging professionals in the Pitch Live community, can you just share how you turned your youth into an advantage to get that position?
So I think it was an interesting time when I was starting my career, and it's an interesting time now. So there may be some parallels. At the time I was starting my career, computers and the ability to analyze data quickly was new. So I literally cashed out my 401k plan at my previous job to bring the first desktop/laptop computer, the luggable, into an office at GNC. I had the first computer in the company, and I bought it myself. And so I had skills and expertise in the data analytics area that just weren't existent in that entire company. And that gave me a big advantage. So at a young age, but the youth actually worked in my favor because I was in charge of a product category, and I could find out what was really happening in that product category without waiting for the paper report to come out once a month. The other thing that I'd say worked in my favor, lots of things worked in my favor, but another thing that worked in my favor was figuring out quickly that the expertise about what nutrition actually did mattered the most. You need to be close to revenue to have a good early career. Like that is, it's plain and simple. If you're helping generate revenue, if you're in a services business, I wasn't in a services business. I was in a product sales business, but I was close to revenue. I was in charge of a sales category, and understanding that the fundamental benefits of nutrition and what it could really do, I was going to make that my competitive advantage. So that was kind of the other bucket of expertise that I was committed to developing. The data analytics side to find out what's going on in our stores and with our products, and the expertise about what nutrition really did, which was initially self-taught, and later I brought in world-class experts to help with that. It wasn't a one-man show or one-person show. So those were foundational. And then, you can't really be in charge of strategy or any of the higher thinkings unless you have a foundation. And I made expertise my foundation.
Now, I want to go back to something you mentioned, which might be shocking to a lot of people, but you bought your own laptop, I guess, or what was considered a laptop at that time. Just out of curiosity, did you ask GNC to buy it for you first and they said no, and you said, okay, I'm just going to buy it anyway? Or did you just go out on a limb and buy it? No,
you should never ask permission to do things you know you need to do anyway. Amy, that's entrepreneurial or in a company. I had a 401k from a previous company I worked for a couple of years. It had just enough to buy a computer. I knew I needed it to pole vault my career through the ranks there, and I didn't even think about asking. When I wanted to differentiate brands at GNC had, if you remember back then, they had like Fig Bars and Oat Bran and 99-cent vitamin C and white and red labels that were generic on the front line. This is a long time ago, probably before some of your listeners were even around. But I wanted to make GNC more of a specialty brand, and so that required differentiated packaging, better formulations. I went out and bought 200,000 blue glass bottles to do a phenomenal looking, highly differentiated brand that nobody had ever done before at GNC. And I didn't ask permission for that either. And when I came back from the glass factory tour where I had approved the shade of blue as the hot glass was coming off and just was cool enough to tell the color, my boss at the time told me that if this worked, I was going to be promoted and probably be his boss. And if it didn't, he was going to enjoy firing me. So no, I wasn't a big fan of permission.
Okay, that's a really important thing to note, because I think a lot of times these days, people feel a little entitled with companies, but it looks like you found more success just not asking and just doing it, and they probably really appreciated that.
It only works if it's successful, though, Amy, and so it's a risk. Just to it didn't have to work out great, but in the end it did. But you're taking a risk if you do that. But
you're investing in yourself. Now, just to give our viewers and listeners perspective, were you already working at GNC before you got into the CEO role, or did you go straight into the CEO role?
No. So I started as the head of business development at a time when we didn't have any capital. So it was a leveraged buyout, 90% debt. And my first job at GNC was to figure out how to grow without using any of our own capital. And I created on paper and in a mathematical model, back to the data analytics, the franchising business idea at GNC. That was my initial scope there. My second scope was to create a specialty retail product offering, a specialty product offering. GNC was migrating or evolving from being a discount retailer, back to that Oat Bran and 99-cent vitamin C, to a specialty retailer. And to do that, we needed to have products that were different and better than was on the market at that time. And that's great news because nobody else is really doing it. So it was more of a wide open playing field than it is right now. So that was maybe the funnest job I've ever had. It was high pressure, but it was a lot of fun. And so I created the initial kind of differentiated branded strategy, a lot of firsts at GNC. And that is those two things, franchising and having our own brands that we could advertise and get all the benefit from those brands back in the store. So it was very efficient. I convinced my boss that I should have an unlimited marketing budget when I was in charge of marketing because I could pay, the margin's really high on our own brands. I could pay for it. So I analytically justified that and got a yes to that, which is a big ask. That was probably one of my early high pressure pitches, like unlimited marketing as long as it's showing profitability. And he said yes. So
let's pause on that a second, because that's really interesting. How did you? Because that was a pitch. How did you prepare for that? Did you set a meeting? Did you just do it casually over, running into him? Like, what was your strategy for pitching him on that?
So my boss was Bill Watts, who's now, went into private equity, and I think he's retired now, mostly retired, I guess. But he was a very strict disciplinarian about business process review. So we did a formal monthly full-scale business plan review, like you would think about a full-day board meeting for a smaller company every month. And so I did not have to make an appointment or wait for the right moment because that thing was coming up every single month, and it was very, very, very no Novocaine dental exam. So I wanted to be proactive instead of just reactive to what had happened in the business. And I was standing on some nutritional knowledge and a lot better analytical knowledge than everybody else had at the time in the company, and I felt like I could prove it that this was a good idea. And, getting that yes, it didn't give me $1 billion marketing budget. It gave me enough marketing budget that if I could justify a campaign, or we ran lots of campaigns, we had over $100 million marketing budget in the end from $5 million at the beginning. But I could justify it. And that kind of analytical discipline and proving it really appealed to him and to the organization. And that's one of the ways that we built the company. We also built a lot of stores, and we also had great other managers and operations and stuff. It was definitely not a 1 or 2 person show, but it was helpful.
I like that you took advantage of an existing meeting that you knew you had with this person, your boss, and to have the opportunity to pitch. But you also knew him well. You knew that he would respond to the numbers, and that was, what was going to motivate him. Was it an immediate yes, or did he have to think about it and get back to you?
No, it was an immediate yes. And then the prove it part was a 10-year process. So like it was a great yes, but it wasn't like something's ended there. Something actually began with that yes.
Do you mind me asking how old you were when you took on the CEO role at GNC?
I was probably 33 or 4, something like that.
Well, pretty young. I want to ask this question because it comes up a lot with younger professionals that
But I'd been there for 10 years already. Okay, so
you kind of started there.
Yeah.
But when you were dealing with other, let's say, companies or investors, did you ever feel like you had to downplay your age, or how did you get around the age that you were to be taken seriously or credibly?
No, there's different ways to lead, Amy. And, that's a hobby of mine to study decision making and how people lead and react to each other. I try to apply it, but I'm intellectually curious about it. And, one of the ways is through, sage experience. And I didn't have that tool in my toolbox, but there are other ways to lead. So one way of leading is to have more knowledge than the people that you're leading, or at least, so study harder, basically. And I use that method. There's the brute force method. That wasn't a tool in my toolbox. There was the I've been around longer than you method. That wasn't a tool in my toolbox. There was the I'm more charismatic than you, so you should follow me anywhere. I didn't have that tool in my toolbox. So I kind of used what I had. And what I had was, I worked back then 7 days a week in the office. There was no work from home. And I just studied everything I could and made it kind of a personal mission to learn everything I could about nutrition and learn everything I could about the dynamics of the category. And I still do. I don't work 7 days a week anymore, but that was the foundation upon which I was building my leadership, having kind of understood what nutrition can do, having a proactive plan for it, eventually creating those plans with smart people that I had surrounded myself with. We were the first company really to bring in scientists to a retailer. Like, to this day, how many other retailers have a team of nutrition scientists working at them? I think GNC stands alone in that. I can't think of another retailer that has a full-time staff of a bunch of, PhD and master's levels research scientists working for them. And they're selling other people's products and their own products. So it was a bold, unique move, but it was based on increasing our expertise. And then I got to stand on the shoulders of what they had taught me. And that's kind of when you get the flywheel going.
Yeah, I like that. Be the smartest person in the room if that's your advantage, and then surrounding yourself with other smart people. Really
learn from the smartest person in the room. You don't have to be it.
Learn from them.
You better learn from them, though.
Now, before we get off of GNC, I just want to touch on one other thing, because you developed GNC's Mega Men, and this was the first multivitamin specifically for men. This had never been done in the industry before. We see it very common now, formulas for women, for men. How did you come up with this idea, and how did you pitch it to the team at the time, since it was so new? How did you convince people that we needed a multivitamin for men?
The most powerful ideas are simple, they're credible, they're intuitive, and they fill an obvious need. So if you think about that, like Steve Jobs said, it's hard to get your thinking simple, but once you do, you can move mountains, right? So without knowing what Steve Jobs had said, because I'm not sure he'd said it yet, I always tried to figure out, like, what is the simple, intuitive, credible way to fill a need that's there? And if somebody says, man, that is obvious, then you win. I took that as a compliment. And so this was the most obvious idea ever. No one had ever thought to differentiate a multivitamin and make it for men. Like, it fits those criteria, which I still use to this day. And if you're going to have a multivitamin for men, lean into it. It's a it's a mega dose of multivitamin. So Mega Men, that took like 5 minutes. Like, it was not, once you thought about kind of I'd like to say that we brought in McKinsey and spent $150 million on that study, but it was like, what can we do with vitamins that hasn't been done before? A lot more has been done with nutrition since then, by the way. That was, sort of 91 or something. But it was a simple insight. Everybody got it right away. To this day, it still sells probably $250 million worth of sales a year. And that was 25 years ago. So it's the simplicity of it. And sometimes you get an aha moment, and you're lucky enough that nobody's had that before you.
I want to ask you about that because you touched on something just now that made me think of something that's very interesting. You have a laundry list of firsts. You've done so many firsts. You've had a lot of aha moments. You are an entrepreneur, truly. Do you have a process when you're trying to come up with something new? Is there an exercise that you do, a series of questions? Do you go on a retreat? Like, what do you do to get yourself in a zone where you're going to come up with these aha moments? What's the process for that?
It's a daily process. So it's not going into the desert and looking into the sun or something. I know people like doing that, but that's not how this works. I try to study and read every single thing I can about a situation, whether it's a business that we're trying to position in my investment banking practice, because positioning really matters, or whether it's a new product concept or the application of a nutrition breakthrough that can help health, and really kind of obsessively try to simplify it. What is the same criteria that spawned Mega Men, I guess, and that can't be done while you are also having the phone ringing and also having the the emails pinging in and meetings and everything else. If, God forbid you try to multitask, which I can't do, but some people try to. So I get up very early in the morning. I'm typically at my desk on something that occurred to me overnight by 4:30 or 5. I write stuff down then. I spend an hour or so writing stuff down that's occurred to me overnight, whatever the overnight processing was. I don't check, social media. I don't read the newspaper. I don't check email. I just try to focus on the sort of value-added creative elements. And then I work out for about an hour and a half. Also, don't even listen to music. I just let whatever the challenge ahead of me is work. And I do that every single day.
Wow.
So
even on the weekends?
Yeah. Every day.
And how long have you been doing this for, this practice?
I started working in a field that actually stimulates your brain. Like I also dug ditches and painted houses and stuff, but I didn't have to do it then. Probably right around the time I started GNC, like late 80s, something like that.
Wow. And you've done this every single day. Get up early in the morning.
Yeah.
Not
get
look
outside.
at it. It's interesting that you say that, because a lot of professionals will say, get up, read the news, do this, do that. Why did you take the other route of clearing your mind, I guess, in a way?
Because it's the same idea of like, it's hard to get your thinking simple, right? Like that, to me, the simplicity is a mark of intelligence. Humor is also a mark of intelligence, because that means you're processing a lot of things and can throw it back in a way that somebody can. But being able to clearly articulate and think about things in a simple way is a critical thought process. And it's the opposite of what social media, news media. I haven't turned a TV on in my house for probably 10 years. Because the minute you start thinking about that, your brain wants to do that. Like it's a cute picture on Instagram, or it's a cool video on TikTok, or it's something, some friend on LinkedIn has got promoted, or somebody, there's upsetting news in the newspaper or on the TV every single minute of the day. And in fact, that's a whole industry that's designed to make you upset because you're more emotionally engaged in whatever, you watch their show more or something. So I just avoid all that. I do read newspapers, but only after that sort of golden couple hours in the morning. I'd say 3 or 4 hours in the morning. And if you measured kind of what I get done for clients during that time, it would be, I have to say, at least as much, if not more, in those first couple hours of the day than if I was working at a desk every day being measured on what I produced for somebody, for even one company. It'd be probably less, because you had the distraction of driving in, and then you had to read the paper, and then you had to talk to your colleagues. So that's it's not going to work for everybody, but that's my secret. And avoiding distraction is its own form of discipline. I think it's critical to also move while you're doing that. So that workout part is important, but I'm not trying to listen to a podcast. No offense to podcast producers. Amy, you're a great one. Or like an ebook or music. I don't even listen to music during all this stuff. So not, like I say, not for everybody, but you ask what I do, and that's what I do every day.
I agree with you. I probably get some of my best ideas when I'm walking my dog, and again, not listening to music or anything. And it just allows your thoughts to kind of free throw through your mind. And it's very helpful. I'm a big muscle movement person too, so I like to be moving. I can't be sitting all day. So that's really interesting. I think if everyone even just did Greg's practice for 3 days out of the week, you'd probably find tremendous success. I want to skip to talking about Celsius, because Celsius is something that everybody will know about, but what they may not know is that Celsius was developed by Greg. It was the first functional beverage with clinical proof of function and with clinical trials. And since we are talking about innovations, there it is. How did you come up with that?
Delicious.
And I also want to know, did people bite on it initially, or did it take a time to get some traction?
Oh, it took a long time. So I think if I tip my camera up, you can see that. See that bottle up there? That's the original Celsius bottle.
Ah, I see it. Blue. You have a blue theme.
Blue with flames. Yeah, we were into flames back then. Flames and Mega Men, Amy. So, so Celsius was not an overnight success, but the simple idea behind Celsius is as powerful today as it was then. And so Celsius started with this idea that you could create a functional beverage that had clinically proven benefit. So functional beverages with function, a very simple, intuitive, credible, fill a need concept. And that had never been done before in the history of the beverage world, and it almost hasn't really been done since, which is surprising to me. The idea of because what most functional beverages do, they're not really functional in the way that I would define functional. To me, functional means you have a proven health benefit. What most do is they take an ingredient that's been studied and they mix it with a whole bunch of other ingredients, and they make the claim about that ingredient just as though it was in isolation, without knowing what the interactions are, without knowing what the product works, without knowing whether, like, let's say you take a mineral that controls blood sugar, helps you control blood sugar, and you stick it in a Pepsi or something, or a Coke or some soda, not to pick on those brands, but they have 35 grams of sugar in a can. So it's not really going to help your blood sugar quite as much, as an example. So we decided to actually prove that a functional beverage could have a function. And in this case, it's enhancing the calories you burn during exercise. So now you got clinical proof behind it. That's a simple insight. It's what Celsius is built on. The exact same formula of actives is what they use today. There's obviously different flavors, and better flavors, by the way, than we originally had. Thank you, Celsius. But it did not catch on right away. It was just about as popular as it was at GNC to hire scientists. Like, there's Greg telling us to drink our clinical trials. That's going to work. So yeah, it was not very, it didn't catch on instantly.
What was the turning point for Celsius? When do you feel like it did catch on? What happened?
Well, there was a couple turning points. One was just getting it commercial. We licensed it to a very ambitious guy who made it his focus of his life, and so that energy really helped, kind of establish the company. When it really found its stride, though, was there was a new marketing person that came in and rebranded it to Live Fit, which is even simpler than my original concept. So, good for you, Vanessa. You figured that out. And then
wait, it's Live Fit?
Live Fit is their slogan.
Well, she must have been inspired by you, because you came up with Live Well at GNC.
I know I should have thought of it, but I also should have thought of Vitamin Water. There's a bunch of stuff I should have thought of, Amy. She thought of it. And they did a repositioning of the brand. The second thing is they got, after Vanessa, they got another very brilliant marketer who figured out how to connect on social media and connect with people on the core benefits. So her name is Kyle. She did a fantastic job. And they got a wonderful, who's still CEO, John Fieldley, who really brought it all together and combined kind of the social marketing, the real marketing, and he had the discipline to stay with the product and keep kind of define a lane and keep that lane to put it really on the map as almost a ubiquitous product now. So a lot of it's management, but they got together, got the flywheel going on. They had enough money to market more, and with more marketing money, they got more distribution. And so it took years, but today it's a over $1 billion company that is, a household name. The formula still works just as well as it did, and it's the same exact formula. The clinical proof is there, but now a lot more people have had a chance to experience the benefits thanks to the current team.
Okay, so my next question is a twofold question, because you are at William Hood now, and I'm sure this comes up, and it's a question specific to Celsius, though, too. So you were one of the original founders of Celsius, but you're not, involved in the day-to-day of that company now. Does their management or CEO ever come back to you as original founder just to bounce things off or brainstorm, or And do you recommend now in your role at William Hood, that companies stay connected to the original founder or CEO? Is there any value in that?
Absolutely, absolutely. John Fieldy and I are friends. We talk regularly. I just gave the keynote at their most recent quarterly all hands meeting about the founding of the company, what it was based on. So I remain in. I'm not running the company or a paid person with them anymore, but I do really enjoy them. I'm really proud of them. Yet if you start a company like that and then it becomes very successful, it's kind of like having a kid that goes to college and then gets a great job and makes more money than you do, and you're really proud of them. Like I'm very happy for them. With the advice we give clients, there's usually a lot of value in at least being connected to a founder. And so it depends on the founder, obviously, but there is the DNA of a company gets set pretty early in its life. And so understanding that and appreciating that, I would advise companies, if you're acquiring a business, to get to know and learn the founder. Most founders are just happy if it's successful. They don't want to come back in. It's a different company by the time that happens. But there's benefit there. So yeah, I'm a fan of founders. Through Nutrition Capital Network, I'm always cultivating founders, helping them pitch. And we do a lot of pitching at William Hood & Company too. When you go into a pitch, Amy, one thing in case we're getting to the end, I wanted to just mention in this interview is you're probably going to get a no, right? Most times you pitch something, the answer is probably going to be no. Right? It is for me. Most of the time you're pitching something, most of the people in the audience are not going to act on what you want them to do. So that really, it's hard to make that the goal. It's the confidence that you have something to offer that they relate to. And I reframe my objectives when I'm giving a pitch to not necessarily getting a yes in one pitch, but demonstrating value and demonstrating that I could help those people, whether it's selling a company or finding the right partner, whatever it is, positioning them for success. I gear it towards how I can help them. And if I can make a point that I could add value to what they're doing, they might not say yes right away. They might say yes a year later. They might say yes 2 years later. They might say no, but they might tell somebody, hey, that guy, that firm is a really good fit for you. So I reframe my goal for a pitch to not have everything riding on it has to be a yes in one meeting. That's not my expectation when I go in.
So your goal in a pitch is to show that you can provide value and just show that?
Well, you have to have a certain amount of confidence to be able to, do this as well. That comes through when you're giving a pitch, is to find a way that I can add value to what they're trying to accomplish, which means you have to understand what they're trying to accomplish, which means that you have to assess your own ability to add value to it. It means you have to articulate what that value is. And we work on long time frames. In William Hood & Company, there could be a 1 or 2 or 3 year gap between when we originally meet somebody and start building a relationship and show value and when some kind of seminal event like a transaction is going to happen and they are picking a banker. And so we're not going for the one meeting close. We're going for building a relationship and showing that we can create value for them over, the time period that they need it. And then when the time comes, hopefully they remember that.
Now, I want to touch on that since you did bring up Nutrition Capital Network, and we are kind of getting close to the end. But I want to let everyone know that, Greg co-founded Nutrition Capital Network. It's given a lot of entrepreneurs in the natural products industry direct access to pitch investors for the first time. It still exists. I know that you eventually, you and your co-founders sold it to New Hope, right? And it's an event that still goes on today. But since you're one of the original co-founders, what pitching guidelines should entrepreneurs keep in mind when they're pitching? Because I've seen some really good pitches from this stage, but then there's this Q&A period, and sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, they totally fall flat. And then that's what you end with. So since obviously you created this and you've seen a lot, what would your advice be to someone who is going to pitch investors in an event like an NCN event, for example?
Well, Nutrition Capital Network is a convening events company for people who want to put money in, like investors in the capital world and entrepreneurs. And that was a passion area for me because that didn't exist when I was doing it. So I had to fly around and one at a time. It's so interesting when we prepare people for pitches, and we give them a template that's based on, you have to hit these 5 or 6 points because we found that they need it. The entrepreneurs always think that the 5 minutes we give them to pitch, or 10, whatever it is never enough time. And the investors always think it's way too much time. So they have to talk about what the business is, why you think you can win. So what you have, why you think you can win, what your plan actually is, and what you're looking for. And it's amazing how often one of those 4 points gets missed in the initial draft. So we give them a template if we have to cover these points. The investors are making a decision about whether to spend more time with you to understand the investment in the end of a short pitch. They're not deciding whether to give you a briefcase full of money like in the movies. So your next step goal isn't to have them hand you money at the end of your pitch. The next step goal is to start a conversation with them so you can tell them a lot more. And so it's a different goal. So the entrepreneurs that follow that are the ones that get the follow-up conversation. Preparation's critical. Amy, I know how you prepare clients. You prepared me for things. You got to anticipate what the most obvious questions are going to be for a Q&A session, for heaven's sakes. That is 101. And so there is at times a lack of preparation for what those might be. You can think of them yourself, or you can have somebody help you. You can ask the event organizers or the judges. I'm often at judges, and every now and then somebody asks me, like, what are you going to ask? So I have a good answer for it. Just do the obvious, which is prepare for what's coming.
Even presidential candidates do this, right? They rehearse the Q&A, possible questions that could come up.
But any media training that you ever done for anybody of your clients, including me, would tell you to have a safe place that you go back to in case you get something you don't quite know how to handle. Have those 3 to 5 answers all ready to go, regardless of what questions they ask. If you don't like the question, you can pivot to the nearest, closest match. That's a great tactic. I know you use it. I certainly use it. It's surprising how some people don't prepare for the obvious, and they know you're going to get a question. They know they're going to be about the business, and they know what they just said. So, so prepare. My one word answer would be prepare.
Prepare. I have a question on the ask. So that fourth very vital component of ask for the money, because I've had some entrepreneurs who were involved in NCN, like before or after, we've had these conversations. Do you recommend that somebody ask for more than they need, less than they need, or exactly what they need? What's the best approach in a situation like this?
A little bit more than they need, because they're going to need more. And if I've seen entrepreneurs ask for enough money to get to a stage where they have more proof because they don't want to give away, but it's not that much more if they could just get to profitability. Once you're at profitability, then in making your own money, then you don't need somebody else's outside money necessarily, unless it's really worth it to grow. So I've talked plenty of later successful entrepreneurs in NCN into upping the amount they ask for, so they have enough to get to profitability instead of just enough to get to some milestone. That's the ideal.
All right. This has been so good. I feel like I could do an entire series with you. I do want to wrap up with one final question that I ask a lot of my guests, and it's on mentorship. You obviously had a very successful career, and you're also very busy. Do you find time for mentorship now? In mentoring others, and how do you prioritize that and in a way to invest into the industry? In what ways are you mentoring others now at this point in your career?
I do it 2 ways. So one is through a structured Nutrition Capital Network. That's one of the reasons that we founded that, is to be able to systematically get kind of the then current most interesting companies in front of investors. So I'll help people every single event I help. I'm still a judge. I gave the opening comments for the last one in Europe. So systematically through Nutrition Capital Network and through William Hood and Company, there are companies that we're not ready. They're not ready for a big time investment banking transaction, but you meet them and you're like, oh, they're gonna either just such delightful people or they're gonna win. It might be 5 years from now, but they're gonna win. So I'll cultivate those. There's an interest in it long term, but it's structured through those two, pretty much the businesses I come across in those two settings.
William Hood he was really lucky to get you, I think. So everyone should know that you really need to take a look at William Hood because they have Greg Horn, and he is quite an asset if you're looking for investment. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have inspired many people with your career journey and will continue to do so. And I want to encourage everyone to share this episode so we can get more people exposed and inspired by all the incredible things that Greg is doing. And be sure to connect with him at greghorn.com. Thank you, Greg, for being on the show.
Thanks, Amy. Always a pleasure. Great seeing you. And I hope your next pitch goes well.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Pitch Live with Amy Summers. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and give us a rating or review. Your feedback helps us plan future episodes. I hope you were inspired today to get out there and pitch and maybe get some quiet time in the morning, no distractions, Greg's advice, and come up with that new innovative idea. As a bonus, join us at inisivox.com where you can get motivated, hone your communication skills, and binge as much mentorship as you want whenever you need it. The link is going to be in the show notes along with my social media handles and all the ways to get in touch with Greg. So let's stay connected. And until next time, keep making success happen. Thanks, Greg.